Hello, everyone. Welcome to Achieving Success with Olivia Akin. I am your host, Olivia Akin. Each week, we will discuss the roadmap of achieving your personal and professional success. We will give you real life stories on growing personally and professionally to achieve your life and career goals with the help of some top notch guests. Today, we are speaking with Glenn Page. Glenn Page is a voiceover artist and founder of Glenn Page Voiceover. Glenn comes to voice acting from a long career in marketing, including for over 10 years as a chief marketing officer for a major group benefits brokerage in New York City, and as the owner of a service marketing firm for over 20 years that pioneered interactive sales communications for professional services firms. You can find Glenn by going to his website, glennpagevo.com. Hello, Glenn. It's fantastic having you on the show. To
Thank
start
you. It's great to be here.
to start off the show, can you tell me what success means and looks like to Glenn Page?
Well, you know, I think like probably everybody who will ever answer this question, I think success changes over the course of a career. I think right now it's naturally a lot different than my younger self. When I was young, I was all about metrics, promotions, new clients, revenue growth was a big one when you have your own company. All the normal milestones that people chase, particularly early in their career. But I think job related ambitions aside, I think throughout my career, I have mostly defined success by my ability to achieve my creative goals. Now, you have to put this into context. For the bulk of my career, I was a creative professional. I was a graphic designer. I was a writer. I was a media producer. So, productive creativity wasn't just part of a boy, it would be nice to have that in my career wish list. It was vital to doing my job and succeeding at my job. But of course, it was also really important as a creative. Creatives are notoriously emotional about you know personal happiness in their job, and that was pretty true of me too. You know, but I think the times in my career when I felt most successful have been the time when believed I was making a unique contribution. I think running my own marketing consulting practice, that period that you talked about in which I was pioneering interactive marketing communications and websites for service firms. Now, just to digress, it can be hard to imagine, but in the 90s and the 2000s, the aughts, both of those were relatively novel concepts in the service industries. Almost everything started with going to a big box printer, with printing presses that were the size of railroad cars and getting a brochure printed. And so doing those kinds of things was fairly novel for that area. And it was just a lot of fun. Um, I jumped into the corporate world, for an opportunity to create a first of its kind communications department. And this is in the insurance brokerage industry. The massive multinationals had been offering all kinds of value added services that smaller brokers just couldn't match. And so they always got to say, well, you can go with X, Y, and Z, or you can come with us, and we've got communications, and we can do this. And so we were the first mid-market broker, we were at $70 million and feeling all happy about that. And Eon and Gallagher were up at like 1 billion, kind of thing. So we're little ants running around. But it was what was really incredibly exciting about that period is that we started to really pull in business because now we had a value added message we can get. And so I think those kinds of periods in my career, including now, are really what success looks like for me. It looks like making a unique contribution, an innovative part.
And that was really key that you kind of just brought up. You don't need to have set goals all the time, but as long as you follow your passion, like you said, of making an impact, making a
Um,
difference, being creative, and you follow that kind of overlapping path and say, okay, this is what I want to do. And this is that could bring moments of such reward and follow your success path. There's those themes.
Yeah, and I admire people who can map out and execute a career. They are they're my heroes. I mean, they're just that's quite an amazing thing to do. That wasn't particularly my journey. My journey was very much moving in the direction of creative growth and innovation, and I tended to pursue that. And so that's, my career didn't so much wander as it moved in those directions. And as technology and as the world advanced, I tended to move in that direction too.
So let's talk about that for a second. So throughout your career, you've done innovative and out of the box thinking and implementing. How does that come to you? What is that process like where you say, okay, this is what I'm going to do now and come up with, more of the innovative side of things?
You know, I think I've always been a natural learner, meaning that uh, learning and having to learn something was never really a barrier or an obstacle for me. It was always a perk. I love those kinds of things. So, an example, how I got into doing Adobe Acrobat PDF interactive brochures. So I decided that I wanted to learn Acrobat. I wanted to give a client a PDF, and as I'm reading the manual, I note that you can put an interactive button in this thing, and it never occurred to me that you could put an interactive button in it. So I started reading about that, and then I started searching on the web, and I started finding people who were hacking Acrobat. And no, literally going into the code of Acrobat and hacking Acrobat. And so after I turned my Acrobat into a lead weight a couple times with hacking, I managed to figure out how to do something that hadn't been done before, which is to create a self-playing PDF that if you hit a button, it just didn't do that page. It went to the next one and the next one and the next one on it. And so that's really, for me in a nutshell, how I approach innovation. It's always about, for me, immersing myself in the minutia. If you get deep enough, I know I know you probably heard this before, but it's true. There is always a next level to what you're doing. No matter how long you've been doing it, no matter how good you think you are, there is always a next level. And if you keep pushing for that next level, things open up. What happened specifically to me is that somebody was doing a book on interactive brochures, and they put this email out to the chat, at the time, chat rooms and stuff, put this out to chat rooms. And I responded and said, here, take a look at this. And they freaked out and said, oh, that's wonderful. So, and then I was a chapter in their book. And so that led to a bunch of other opportunities. And then I just moved in that direction, not being an idiot, just if the market wants this, so I moved. And that's almost a template for how I've approached anything. Immerse, figure out how you can do it differently, and figure out how you can bring it to the market different than the guy before.
And I think that's a key point right there. Immerse yourself in what you're doing,
Yeah,
and the doors can open up. I strongly agree with that. You never know by what you're working on today how can that impact
yeah,
or change the direction of your career, or what you're doing in your role now, or what you might say, "Oh my god, I really like this. I want to do this more." And it becomes a whole different avenue for you. So that being said, how have you kind of known when the transition or when you want to transition into that next role, step, career path?
Well, look, opportunities take care of themselves. I mean, you have to. Opportunities don't drop out of from the hand of God. In point of fact, you know, luck comes to people who prepare themselves. And so I go back to constant learning, constant immersion in it, and opportunities in my career. Opportunities extended out of that. I can only speak for myself. Different people have different experiences. That's been my experience. Um, and so and so I think if anybody is looking for any kind of insight, while there are multiple avenues to career advancement, not the least of which is networking and all the things you hear about, that for me is I think one of the most overlooked areas, and that is simply being better than the person standing next to you is a tremendous way to have opportunities drop into your lap. But I think at the other end of the spectrum, and I've always had periods in which I felt I was repeating myself professionally. And it wasn't always because it was a boring job. Uh, you know, there are always those kinds of jobs or periods in jobs in which you are just, that's why they call it work, right? It's not always fun. You're doing your thing. But it can equally happen at the other end of the spectrum where you are so damn busy that every day is a crisis, that every day is a deadline. I was in employee benefits, and I was a communications department in employee benefits. And during open enrollment, we're the busiest people on the planet. We have literally had, for like a 5-person department, we have literally had 22 companies who were going into open enrollment within 48 hours. And needing their communications in that period. And so, but the problem with that's exciting, and for the first 5 years, that's exciting. After a while, what happens is that continual crisis, that continual state of emergency has you chasing deadlines, which means you're not building towards something. You're not building towards something in that job, and you're not building towards something in that career. And it is equally as stultifying, it's equally stagnation producing as the other end of the spectrum where you're overqualified for a job, you're just boring, and the company's just happy with business as usual and everything. And when luckily I haven't had and haven't wanted to change jobs all that much. It's really only happened a couple of times in my career. But I've had an experience in which I was chasing emergencies and chasing deadlines so much that it was pretty clear that if I didn't personally do something to change my direction, that I had dead ended. And for Glenn Page, when how do I know when it's time? When I look professionally and see myself in a courtyard, in a dead end, and it's time to move on. And and I call it losing your forward momentum. And I think what I wish for everybody in their career is they have a period in their career, if not their entire career, where they've got that constant feeling of momentum, that they're on top of their game, that it's rewarding to do what they're doing, and that people appreciate what they're doing and all of that. That master of the universe, kind of feeling in which you're just on the top of your game. You know, and I think I know it's time to change when not not because you go through a month, not because you go through a week, kind of thing, but when you get to a point, and I think that's if you're going to be the guardian of of your own career, if you're going to be your own mentor, that's, I think, for me, one of the biggest hurdles to look out for. Sorry, that was a long-winded response.
No, but a very good one. You brought up a key point, not to lose your momentum. And sometimes you get so busy with the day to day and those stressors, the deadlines,
Yeah,
balancing life, everything, and you get frustrated that you start to forget your passions and why you enjoy
yeah,
it. And when you forget those things and work becomes so stressful and so overwhelming and you don't enjoy it and you don't like it, you start to not perform as well either. So you're doing a disservice to yourself in the long run too. And those moments you have to say, is this really what I want? And if not,
yeah,
how can I change it?
yeah, and as a natural progression of what you just said, and not to be afraid to do it.
Mhm. Here's the thing that could hold you back the most. You
Oh,
never you never know what's on the other side of the door.
nope. You never do. I look, I'm at a point in my career where the vast majority of my career is behind me, and there have been times when I've made decisions, and both my wife and I have gone gulp, and gee, I hope this works out. I'm still married, so thank God for that.
And what do you do in those moments when you say, I want to take this leap, I want to do this instead? And you have those moments of gulp, I hope this works out. How do you encourage yourself and build yourself up?
Hmm. You know, one of the and now what I'm about to say is informed by the fact that I am married to a clinical social worker and psychotherapist,
And a great woman, let me interject.
and a wonderful woman. So I'm contractually obligated to say that, but she really is. My wife has been just an enormous mentor value to my career because I get to talk about these kinds of things. But the observation I wanted to make is that it is critical for me to be sure that I'm doing it for the right reasons. All right. You can't run from something. You have to run to something. No matter your situation. I don't care if you have the most toxic boss in the world. If you run from something, you are going to wind up standing at a precipice, not being prepared to get across it. And so the times in my career when I have transitioned highly successfully have been those in which I knew I wanted to make the transition, but I prepared for the transition. And the times when I didn't, when I said gulp and I went ahead a little too quickly, I didn't the preparation. And that's the hard part. you know I grew up in an era in which everything, adulthood, the old, the post World War II concept of manhood and everything was always the Clint Eastwood steely eyed, let's go do it, and he never said nobody prepared for anything. They just went and did it, and that was the definition of bravery. That was the definition of courage. And in point of fact, in managing your career, the definition of courage is taking the time to plan and prepare for your next step before you make the leap. And then if you have to make the hard choice, which is inevitably to walk away from a nice paycheck to do something else, then at least you have done your due diligence and moved in it. And so that for me is the answer to the question. Preparing and being ready for the new opportunity.
So that leads me to my next question. So you're currently a voiceover artist,
Hmm.
and this is a career and a company you've recently started.
Yeah,
So
about 15 months. Yeah, about
yeah.
15 months.
So in prepping for that, like you said, you got to be prepared, you got to know your stuff and just do it right. How did you prepare for this?
Oh gosh, I took it was a good it was actually a little more than a year, a good year though, in which I hired a coach. I joined an organization that had online classes and took online classes for a year. I went to every stupid seminar you could possibly go to, and I practiced incessantly. You can't see in here, but off to that side of the screen is a 6 foot by 5 foot by 7 foot recording booth, that I built over the course of that year. And I didn't actually leave quote marketing. I was a marketing consultant. I didn't leave marketing until my coach said to me one day, "What are you waiting for?" Now, come on, you know, oi, let's, get going. Um, and so, I think, again, back to that immersion, it was important to me, to not learn on my client's dime if I could avoid it. And so I did a lot of prep over a year. Yeah.
And that's a good point. When starting this podcast, I did a lot of research before doing it.
Hmm.
And our my great production team here, the owner and I had a few conversations. And there's those moments of realization. I was like, okay, we got to do it right. We're going to prep beforehand. We'll record X amount of episodes. So if just in case this, that, and the next. And he stopped me at one point, I think during our first conversation. We're like 2.5 hours in, really vibing.
Yeah.
And I was like, we should record, 10 episodes before we even launch so that this way we have buffer in case guests and this and that. And he's like, why 10? What's the magic number with 10? And I was like, well, based on our conversation and this and that, I just feel like 10 gives us time and it gives us the ability that, okay, we have those buffers and it gives us time to build everything else. And he stopped me and he goes, "You don't need 10. At what point you're going to have to take the leap and just
Yeah.
launch and see how people react to it. And if you don't launch, you'll never know." And I was like, "Okay, you have a point." Like, sometimes you're like, you're holding yourself back in sometimes trying to prepare too much, that it takes that extra person to say, "Okay, you're doing what you have to do, but at what point are you going to really take the leap and just do it?"
Yeah. One of the things, seriously, Olivia, one of the things I found is that no matter how much I practiced, there was there was nothing like actually having to produce a real job that someone was paying for, to focus your attention, to really make you start trying to perform at your best. When it's just you, when you just grabbed a script and you're putting it down and you're just doing a demo and you're just practicing, you tend to accept some things that when it's an actual project, you won't let yourself get away with. And I found that I had plateaued during that year. If you listen to me at 6 months really versus a year, in some respects I had plateaued. And so over the course of the first 6 months, luckily I started out relatively quickly with a bunch of projects. Over the first 6 months, I started making a lot more progress simply because it mattered.
Mhm.
And in the creative arts, which you are, in the creative arts, that there is nothing like preparing something for an audience to really focus you and make you bring your A game.
Well, and that's exactly right. It's that extra pressure and sometimes the
Mhm.
push that will really bring your work to a next level,
Yeah.
right? It's not just prepping. And that's kind of what Dennis um, was saying to me. He was like, okay, if you do 10, that's great. But like, why are you waiting? Like, what are you gaining and what is the audience gaining? And we ended up like only recording two before we launched and use those 2 as the beginning. He was like,
Mhm.
"Let's go, you gotta try it," and it really does when you're put on, I don't wanna say the spot, but when you're put in a situation where you have to perform, you've prepped, there's no walking away now. whether it's a meeting, an event, it puts that extra notch. It
Yeah,
makes you do
that's
better.
actually that's a good point I hadn't thought about. It's the also the difference is your name, your reputation is now behind it. When everything's sitting on the shelf and it's just you. When I have a project on my computer and it hasn't gone to the client, it's a very intimate relationship. It's art. It's this is mine, and I'm very protective of it. My wife will come in, can I listen to it? No, it's not ready. Go away. Kind of thing. When you give it to a client, it's a product,
Mhm.
and it's commerce, and so there's a whole level of difference to that I admire you for doing the podcast. I really do. It's a tough thing to do. I've been trying to get my courage up to do it, and so far I actually haven't gotten there, despite the fact that I've been doing voiceovers for it. So yeah.
Well, thank you. And that leads me to my next question. W- So you're currently a voiceover artist and you've been working on hundreds of projects.
Yeah, yeah, north of, I say hundreds, I'm a marketer. It's actually about 275, north of 200. It's technically hundreds. I'm a
Yeah,
marketer.
that's definitely hundreds.
Hey, it's a couple hundreds, absolutely.
Why voiceover?
Well, voiceover, for me is somewhat of a return home. I started out as a broadcaster. Right out of college, I had joined the Air Force and gone into broadcasting, and had been on radio for a couple years, on cable TV for a couple years, um, um, and I loved it. I loved to perform. My journey took me to marketing, from public relations to marketing, and then and on and on. But like a lot of people in the middle of the pandemic, as my consulting business had just evaporated before my eyes, like every other consultant in the United States, you know, I looked around for something to do, and this was something that was really appealing. Um, for over 35 years, I was the guy hiring the voice actor. And it was really an interesting experience to now be on the other side of the microphone. One I wanted to explore. I like performing. I don't have stage fright in the classic sense, and everything. I like performing. And so it was a natural progression for me of looking for something to do creatively. Um, and uh, and it also gives me a chance to now to focus more on the creative product than the management metrics and the strategic corporate goals, and that's a real luxury for me.
And you brought up a key point here of sometimes in moments of not knowing, like the pandemic, no one knew what
Yeah,
was going on.
no idea.
You had to reevaluate, and you kind of did a full circle here of going back to your roots and what you really liked doing and the aspects of what you really liked doing and said, let me try this. And it's a new area for you, but something you've always been passionate about.
Yeah, and also yes, and yeah, but look, this was supposed to be a retirement gig for me. I was supposed to do this and then go also and biking, and then walking my dogs and stuff like that and everything, and then boom, next thing I know, I'm working 10 hours a day. My wife again is not surprised at that. Um, but you know it's also not just the creative juices. I don't want to say that this is all about self-expression. The voiceover industry is highly competitive. It's experiencing monumental disruptions, and that's not hyperbole. We are in the middle of AI voicing, and so AI has gotten so competent that it is now at the what we like to call the bottom of the industry, all those bread and butter projects in which you don't really need to be good, you just need to be, need to voice it for the client. AI is taking those jobs now. And so it's a real it's a real sea change, and one that is a fascinating challenge for me. And by the way, I've experienced or seen that multiple times in my career. Um, and and technology changes, and you have to scramble. You just my first year as VP of corporate communications, I had a printing budget of $60,000. My second year, it was $25,000. My third year, it was $10,000. And what was the difference? The big Minolta color printer that we put back in the mailroom. And all of a sudden, all the work we were giving to the printers, we were doing ourselves. All right. And so those kinds of things, put yourself in the position of being a printer, when that's happening. And so a lot of that's going on right now in the voiceover industry. And it's really a challenge to figure out how to differentiate yourself, how to position yourself in, this industry tends toward commoditization anyway. Look, we're a voice. And so I may think I'm a great voice, but I'm a voice. And so there are just as good, if far better voices right over here. And so the question is, how do you differentiate yourself when the product is a voice and a file that you give? And it's challenging all of my marketing skills right now, and it's a lot of fun to do that. So anyway, that's
Well, you just touched upon an avenue I wanted to explore with you of how, in a changing environment, especially with technology, how you kind of continuously challenge yourself or try to bring in different perspectives so that you're a differentiator. You're different than the AI and you can compete and continue to grow your own growth within your career, but continue overall success.
yeah. Well, is it- put my marketing strategist hat back on for a second. There are a couple ways to deal with quality based differentiation. I have for years, by the way, told clients that if you are competing on quality, you in essence have no competitive differentiation. Everyone says I'm quality. Very few people actually are. So if everyone's saying it, but you're the person who actually believes it, or excuse me, actually delivers it, how do you differentiate on that? You can be quality, but you can't sell quality. All right. And so that's my challenge. Well, in voiceover, one of the ways to do that is to specialize, is like, for example, e-learning, to be the absolute best e-learning voice actor that you can, and then build your reputation around that. Um, equally possible, and a valid way to do this is to differentiate. Yeah, and excuse me, is to just do a lot of different genres. I Over this past year and a half, I've done commercials, I've done corporate narrations, I've done documentaries, I've done radio, podcast, and TV show intros. I just got done about 2 months ago voicing voicing a documentary, first person documentary about a guy suffering from tinnitus, ringing in the ears so loud that he was on the edge of suicide. That was an interesting one. My very next job after that one was voicing the open enrollment presentation for a multinational, corporation. Um, and so, and so, getting a reputation for being, for just being a Renaissance person, that you can do a lot of different things. But I have to tell you, and to be perfectly honest, I haven't cracked the code quite yet. I'm still in that immersion period in which I'm immersing myself in the culture. I have joined lots of organizations. Just joined one yesterday, in which so I think I belong to like five and all of them have subscriptions every month, of course, but um, that's going to be, I think the answer to the question, without getting into without nerding out too much over this whole thing, right? Is that it's not a marketing issue; it's a sales issue. That this is going to be a direct marketing challenge, and more likely it's going to be driven by my ability to make connections to producers and to people who can funnel me work, than somehow finding a fundamental strategic differentiation.
And I think that's a key point you touched upon. It's creating the connections.
Yeah, yeah,
Sometimes it isn't you have to be better than everyone else and, think so outside the box like an Elon Musk with Tesla, where it's so different. Sometimes it's, hey, I'm really good at this. I'm really passionate about it. I'm still learning. And being self aware enough that we could always learn, as well as we can always grow and make connections and build those relationships. Relationships are so important to your own growth. And you never know the person you're talking to, like we're talking to right now, the two of us, how that can grow your career down the line.
absolutely. There is no doubt about it. Going back to our earlier discussion about opportunities, it wasn't just that I learned everything I needed to know. It wasn't just that I made myself better. You can do all of that and still paint yourself into a corner, because you don't recognize that first and foremost, your business and your career is about relationships. Um, nobody, 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 nobody is sold from somebody they don't like. Nobody buys something from someone they don't like, those are two different things, by the way. Allowing yourself to be sold is different than buying something. And again, nerding out on marketing, um, but nobody gets ahead in their career, no matter how much they train, unless they recognize what you just said, and that it's about the relationships, and ultimately somebody is going to give you an opportunity because you have established a connection, and that's been true, absolutely true in my career.
And I think a key thing there too is it's not just, okay, we're going to build a relationship and in months from now, I don't need you. So we don't need to talk anymore. It's sustaining those relationships, like you just said. It's building them and fostering them. And, you know, that doesn't mean you have to talk every day, but it's those touch base moments, just checking in, seeing how someone else is doing, and understanding they're a human too. So it's not just a give and take relationship. It's also a how are you doing? Oh, congratulations on this kind of a thing too. You have to be mindful of that
Yeah.
because people will pick up
Yes.
on it.
Yeah, there is absolutely no doubt about it. There is that Animal House. Hi, I'm Rush Chairman. Damn glad to meet you. Kind of falseness that creeps in. It can even creep in to your texting and your emailing. You are either you are either the kind of person who likes people and wants to interact with people. You know, well, I was about to say, or you're not, and that's false. You can learn it's great if you're a natural person, and you like people, but you can also teach yourself. You can learn these things, but you have to learn it. And uh, anyway, so I agree with you entirely.
So, how do you balance your voiceover work and this company, especially in it's still growing, it is still newer. It's been founded 15 months ago, like you said. How do you balance that with what you're passionate about outside of work and those hobbies?
Well, look, I I I I have done, I believe very strongly right now in work life balance. Uh, I think, the the facile, superficial thing to say is you just got to find a hobby you're passionate about, and you don't want to just drag yourself to the gym. You want to find something passionate about, and that all is absolutely true. And I am passionate about cycling. I can justifiably be called a fanatic about it. I do it during the season. I do it 5 and 6 times a week.
Glenn,
You know,
how
I get
many miles you go? Tell everyone how far you go.
Oh, in a ride, a nighttime ride can be 30 miles. A weekend ride is generally 50, 55. And we'll do one on Saturday, one on Sunday. Um, yes, if you're thinking that sounds like a second job, you're absolutely right. It is. Um, but what I love about it, just to you know, put a coda on the whole passionate thing. What I love about it is it's very zen for me. You can't be worrying about things at 15, 20, 25 miles an hour. I mean, you have not only your life in your hands, but the people you're riding with. And so it's important to stay focused. And I love that about it. It's very zen for me. Um, but what I was really going to say is that I've been at a point in which it was all work, in which it was in the middle of open enrollment. It could literally be 16 hours a day, and you walk in. Now I work from home, so you could walk in at like 7 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes I got up at midnight. It's just the way those things are. But here's what happened to me: gained lots of weight. I mean, lots of weight, because I was eating badly and I wasn't exercising, and my cholesterol shot up and my blood pressure went up, uh, and my wife will tell you I wasn't the funnest person in the entire world. I think that's a value judgment, but you'll have to talk to her about that. I was just grouchy and just not happy, um, and and ultimately my work suffered. Ultimately, my attitude got bad, and it's just, "Oh my god, do I have to go do this all over again?" kinda thing. And, that's when I had my, come to Jesus talk with my wife, and got on a diet, went, and started literally making time to go out and ride, instead of just letting it go by. And lo and behold, not only did my weight come down and my cholesterol and my blood pressure, but my work improved. And all of a sudden, I was, oh, good, I get to go to work again. And so, this work-life balance thing about it's important to make time, for hobbies and passion and everything. Yes, it is absolutely. It's also be careful, if you're so focused on work that that's all you want to do and you want to do it, that's great. Careful what you wish for. 5 years, 10 years down the road, you will have painted yourself into a productivity, a creativity corner that work-life balance can help you avoid. And that has absolutely been true of me. I can only speak for myself, but the answer to your question is yes, passion's wonderful, and it's great, and I love being in the moment, and everything. But I've done the opposite too, and I know the importance.
And I think that's a key point there of sometimes when you get into a groove and get so stuck and then you find your passion outside of work, it really kind of opens the um the shades.
Yeah,
It
it's a good way
it
of describing it. Yeah.
revives you. I think, for me, pre-COVID especially, and even now I've kind of gotten back to it a little bit. I will admit there's those highs and the lows. Uh
Mhm.
there was a time I worked 6, 7 days a week. I worked in professional sports before this, and when you're in season, out of season, there
Absolutely.
there
Yep.
is no break.
Nope.
Um, and you're rolling home, and 3 hours later, you're going back to work. And to me, I loved what I did. I loved the organizations I worked for and the people I got to work for. But when you take a step back and or you start a different path and you get weekends off, for example, and so you don't have the ability to work on the weekends and it forces you to say, okay, what what does this look like? What does my free time look like to me? It opens a whole different world. And I personally have really appreciated the work life balance going from one end of the spectrum to more of
Yeah.
the other end. And, it's trial by fire sometimes, right? So, listeners, don't get me wrong here. You can be passionate and very busy and love it, right? So, working, volunteering, but sometimes you need that refresh. And so, if you don't take self time, you can't refresh, and it's like a rechargeable battery. After a while, like Glenn said, you start to sit there and you get cranky. Everybody has a bad day, but when it's consistent over and over again and you're just not happy with how your day ends, there's a different vibe. You don't want that.
Yeah.
And you're you're hurting yourself in the long run because when you also look back on your life, you're going to be like, "Oh, I wasn't happy for all that time."
Yeah. The old joke, nobody on their deathbed, nobody ever said, "Boy, I wish I was at the office more." You know? No, nobody, said nobody. And so, and also, if for no other reason than the only way to maintain productive creativity is 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 to pace yourself. It's you know from a we all have this myth that creativity, truly innovative breakthrough kinds of creativity, always happen right at the beginning of a career, and then someone just spends the rest of their career trying to recreate that. Well, that may be true in certain spectacularly complex kinds of industries, or excuse me, professions. But in 99.9% of the world, people are being creative in the beginning, in the middle, and in the end. I have worked for people in their 60s and 70s who were just as innovative, who were taking just as many chances and in buying, buying a company to expand, or opening up a new office, or hiring me, to expand capabilities. All of those people weren't 25. They were all being productively creative. And so I think the expectation that anyone going into a career, should have, is to be productively creative their entire length of their career. There's no such thing as getting to a certain level and then you get to just manage, and then other people can be creative, And so if you go in with the expectation that you will be a constant learner, you will be a constant innovator, you will be creative throughout your entire career, the point you're going to get to is going to be so much in beyond the other strategy, that it's just it you will have lost so much by the expectation that you're going to work hard now and then reap the rewards later.
It's always a like you said, and bicycling kind of metaphor, it's about the journey and the ride and not just
Yeah.
the destination. And so I think, Glenn, that those were some really great points. And I think it's really important to remember to refuel yourself because if you don't, you're just going to hurt yourself and hurt your dreams and what you can achieve in life.
Yeah, there's a metaphor. And in voice acting, there's a you, I was did a long voice session this morning. You can hear it in my voice. My voice is a little raspy. It's raspy because you have to take care of your instrument, whatever that instrument is, whether it's your brain, your voice, or whatever. You have to take care of it. And so, to, you know, um, I think everyone listening needs to decide what their instrument is, but once they have a good feel for what it is, they have to have a strategy for taking care of it.
And I think that's a great key point right there. Find what your instrument is and
Yeah.
remember to take care of it. So, Glenn, how can people get in touch with you in order to connect?
Oh, that's easy. GlennPageVO.com. That will give you an entree into the world of Glenn. The our industry is all about demos. It's all about, click on this. Do you like the sound? And so that's where people go to find out the kind of work I can do. So and and text me. All my telephone numbers all over that website. So
Well, Glenn, thank you for all of your insights today. A few of our key takeaways from today's conversation is find your instrument and remember to refuel that instrument and take care of it.
yeah.
Immerse yourself in your learning and dive into it and embrace learning and don't lose your momentum. You got to keep going and keep bicycling and everything. And don't run from a situation or a fear you might have about starting something. Run towards it. This was a great episode with our top notch guest, Glenn Page. Thank you for listening and have a successful day.